live right now. Hello, hello, everybody. We have Alex Gioiella and we have Will Barnhart. Welcome, everybody. And we're introducing the U.S. Fencing Development Referee Committee session for today. So, go ahead, Alex.
Hello, everyone. So today we're going to be talking about just progressing in your second weapon. How to do that, what it can look like. I ref all three weapons nationally. Saber's my primary, then epee, then foil. Will?
I am primarily an epee referee. I referee epee and foil nationally. Regionally, in a pinch, I will referee saber.
Will is quite a competent saber referee, even if he doesn't believe it. So it's fine. I will continue to work on him for his saber refereeing. So the big thing about progressing in your second weapon is, first and foremost, being confident in your primary weapon and also understanding the rules. Like the rules apply to all three weapons. So it's really, really important that you understand them, that you know them, and that you are confident applying them in your primary weapon. So when you apply them, when you're working on your second weapon, you can do that confidently and competently. Big thing, if you're thinking about refereeing and you're like, I'm just a foil referee and all I'm ever going to do is foil, that's pretty not accurate. Unless you want to pigeonhole yourself. When you do if you haven't taken the test and you plan on taking the test, please, please, please try to take all three. You may never use all three, but at least you only have to take the test one time, as opposed to taking it for foil and then going back and taking it for epee and then going back and taking it for saber. So try to take them all in one shot. When you take the test, you do have 48 hours to pass all of it. So you've got some time, and there's a really good study guide online that Lisa Sapery put up. So you should check that out too.
Yeah. Just on a side note for that, if for people who are looking for refereeing nationally, and even regionally now, it is extremely difficult to get hired full-time as a referee unless you have a second weapon. A lot of assigners won't even look at you if your primary weapon is a 6 and you don't have a secondary weapon. Unless you are specifically 5 and above in one weapon, which is now extremely rare to not have that and not a secondary rating, or you're an international referee with an FIE license, you're not getting hired. It's just not happening.
No, and that's a really good point. Most referees now that want to ref nationally understand that they need to have a second weapon, and they do. The thing I will say, and you will hear people say it, but understand it's a little bit different. You will hear people say, well, the epee referees only have epee ratings. It's a little bit different for a variety of reasons. One being generally the epee specific cadre is a little bit older when it was easier to get hired as a one weapon referee. And the other thing is the epee referees are experts in their weapon. And it's a little bit different. Their weapon goes a little bit longer. It's just a little bit different. Please don't be that person that goes, well, the epee referees only have to have one weapon. They don't, and they do and they don't. You will find that most epee referees actually have a second rating that they don't get to use all that often, whether it be foil or saber. But if you go and look, you will see that most of them have a second weapon. Good.
Yeah, the other thing for epee referees only having one rating is right now, for better or worse, the epee events are structured differently than the other two weapons with significantly larger populations. So epee referees are doing, previously for the past few seasons, 2-day events. Now we're still doing the same events, but just condensed into one day. So it's easier for someone who is an epee referee to kind of hide in that weapon and be an expert in that weapon without having to do something previously. Now that we're back down to 1-day events, I'm assuming that they're going to push more for epee referees to be able to do more things. That was really only for NACs. For summer nationals, you would need to have 2 weapons. usually. They wouldn't hire you for 5 days because there's not 2-day events or those large, massive 2-pool events at Summer Nationals.
So the big thing about working in your second weapon, I know for me, I originally thought foil was going to be my second weapon because I was like, oh, I'm a saber referee, so I'll just choose the other right-of-way weapon. Don't assume that because whether you're a foil referee and you think saber is going to be easier because it's right-of-way, or you're a saber referee, you think foil is going to be easier because it's right-of-way. Don't make that assumption. And also don't make the assumption that I'm going to do epee because it's easy. It's not. You really do need to understand the weapon. I think the biggest mistakes I have ever made, and the ones that stick out in my mind, have been more so in epee than they've been in saber. So it's really important that, you know, as a referee, you really do understand the second weapon. I see Taysir Mahmood is on. She was actually the person who observed me the first time at a national event in epee, and I made she was really nice about it, but I made a blistering error. And I still remember it. And this was now probably 7 or 8 years ago. And, you know, it was a mistake that I made because I had an assumption that epee was easy. And when that changed, my perspective changed in it as well. But it's really important that whatever you choose your second weapon to be, you go into it with the same energy and the same, and holding it to the same importance and giving it the same value as your primary weapon. Just because it's not your primary weapon doesn't mean those fencers deserve any less commitment or any less of your energy than the fencers in your primary weapon.
I'm just gonna, because epee kind of gets to be the ugly stepchild here a little bit when it comes to secondary referees, because and I kind of talked about this a little bit in my epee video that I did a few weeks ago. Every epee fencer, if you compete long enough, is going to have a referee on the strip, saber or foil, come to their pool and make some comment about how they don't actually really want to be there. And you don't want to be that referee. You overhear referees talking about that when they're talking to each other in the middle of a pod, about how they don't really want to be there for epee because epee is boring. It doesn't matter whether it's Y10 epee, whether it's vet 70s epee or Div 1 epee, someone in that pod will say it, who's a referee. And that referee has now lost all confidence for every fencer and every coach on that strip. And you have to remember, those Y10 kids and those vet 70 kids, they're taking their lessons every week. They're working just as hard as your Div 1 athletes, not to the same level, but they are at the club just as much, and they pay for those competitions just as much as everybody else does. So you have to give them that level of respect that you would give your primary weapon.
The big thing for me is, and I'm gonna definitely keep going on Will's thought, is take it seriously. So recently for me, like, foil scares me a little bit, just for a variety of reasons. I found myself intimidated by some of the foil referees, and not because they are intimidating, but the command over the weapon that they had, and the confidence everyone had in them just intimidated me. So 2 really good examples. 2 of our RC members, actually, Kelly Kaler and Devin Donnelly, they have such a command of foil and the things that change in foil and how something should be called, and the tempo and the timing and the rules and the verbiage and how to talk to the fencers, how to talk to the coaches. And all of this was like, I can't do this. And so I kind of hid from foil. And I had a bad experience with a couple coaches being angry at me because of, like, you're a saber referee and you're trying to call foil and you're calling it like saber. And that happened to me in the beginning, but I sat down and I learned foil, and I had conversations with Kelly and with Devin and with Bucky Leach, with Greg Macialis and a few other people. And it was fun and it was telling, and it really helped me out. And this past season, I did junior men's foil at a NAC, asked to do it, just to see how my foil was and how I was feeling about it. And I had Greg Macialis come up and say, wow, you're calling foil like foil. It's great to see. It's like, oh, that's so wonderful. wonderful. And for me, it's really important because foil isn't even my second weapon. It's my tertiary weapon. It's the one where I'm like, yeah, if you really need me, I'm there, I guess, kind of, maybe. So, it's important to take it. It's just really important to take it seriously. And to understand when the rules change, to understand, non-combativity and foil, to understand, when you couldn't have the arm and you couldn't have your back arm forward, now you can. It's really important to understand the rules changes, even if it's just your secondary weapon or your tertiary weapon.
Yeah, no, and not just the rules changes, but just understanding especially when you're flipping between right-of-way weapons, there's nuances for the timing. And even if, like, I am not a very strong saber referee, but I try to, once I make a call, stay consistent with that call for the bout. So it's about understanding your consistencies, so that way you can make or attempt to make the same call every time in the weapon that is not your specialty. They will forgive you more. Coaches and athletes will forgive you more if you are a known expert in one weapon and you are there to help out, because every tournament right now has issues and challenges with hiring. There just aren't enough referees. So fencers and coaches won't like it, but as long as you're not oppressive about it or rude about it, or you don't look like you want to be there and you have the appearance of caring about the fencers that are in front of you and doing the best job you can with the limited skill set you have, they will be more forgiving. Not all of them, not all the time, but for the most part, they will tend to be more forgiving and be willing to have a conversation with you about it afterwards, rather than just yelling at you, walking and stomping away, and then you get nothing from them, which is the worst thing.
So true. The big thing, and I really want to kind of drive this point home, is, don't look like don't say you don't want to be there. Don't look like you don't want to be there. Don't huff and puff and all that, because if you're trying, you will find that the other referees in that weapon, the higher level athletes, and even the coaches are happy to help you. They're happy, even if they're frustrated, they're happy to sit down and say, okay, look, this is what I think you're missing, and this is why I think you're missing it. And you may get a coach come up to you and say, what's your primary weapon? I haven't seen you in foil. Are you a foil referee? Are you a saber referee? Are you an epee referee? Because if you're a saber referee, I think this is why you're missing this. If you're an epee referee, this is why I think you're missing this. And people are very, very willing to have a constructive conversation if you have a good attitude. And I don't think Will or I could stress this enough about just having a good attitude and having a good perspective. I mean, I don't know how many times, how many tournaments Will and I have gone to together, where, we show up and I start my day in foil with Will. The middle of our day is epee, and we're both ending our day in saber. And we have kind of run the gamut of our comfort levels in terms of weapons. But, as long as you have a positive attitude, A, it makes it easier, but B, people are willing to be constructive, and people are willing to have a conversation even if they're frustrated. And I think that's really, really important. If you're a seasoned referee already in a weapon and you're like, oh, I'm not sure, I feel like it, I can't start a new weapon now. Yes, you can. You absolutely, absolutely, absolutely can. I know referees who have been one weapon referees for a long, 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 long time. And their last season, last season, they started trying to really get into a second weapon, and they were putting the time and the effort in. So it doesn't matter if you're already a seasoned referee in one weapon. You can always pick up a second weapon. There's always people around you who will be willing to help you.
Yeah, and I just, in terms of being a secondary referee as an athlete, because a lot of people, especially epee referees, now that we're back down to hopefully one-day formats for a while, we're going to hopefully see more athletes try to referee to help with NACs. because you can get epee referees hired as a 3-day weapon referee, hopefully a little bit. You're not going to referee, if you're an athlete and a referee, your weapon all the time. Because think about it, you're refereeing the event. You can't referee the event you're fencing in. So there's already, in a 4-day event, at least 1 day, you're not refereeing anything. Possibly 2, if you're doing 2 events that weekend, you may have to pick up foil if you're an epee fencer, or foil if you're a saber fencer, or epee, because you're going to go where they need you to go that day. I think a lot of people look at refereeing multiple weapons as kind of a detriment, and it's going to pollute what they already know about a weapon. So people look at saber and foil, and so saber referees and foil referees go, I don't want to learn that. It's going to mess up my foil timing or my saber timing that I already have. Well, if learning foil timing or saber timing messes up what you already know, you're not already that strong and confident in your saber or your foil reffing. That tells your assigners that right there. You don't feel confident in foil or saber because you can't compartmentalize between the two. Because what should happen is, in the beginning, your saber refereeing should look a lot like your foil refereeing, or vice versa. But if your foil refereeing automatically starts changing, that means that you don't know really your own timing for foil or what you want to see for foil right then. And that's a bigger problem. So get confident in your weapon, practice your weapon, but don't think one weapon should affect the other.
I think that's a really good point. And I think that kind of pushes the point that, I hope all the CRIs are making in the seminar, which is warm up your eyes for whatever it is you're going to do. Especially if you're doing the weapon that's not your primary, warm up your eyes. If I know I'm doing foil in the morning, I will go and I'll watch people warming up, and I'll make the calls in my head. I'll see what the coaches are saying, just so I can kind of get a feel for the weapon that morning. The other thing you can do also, if you're serious and you really, really want to progress, if you're doing a regional event, and we'll use Region 3, so then like the Boston, New York, New Jersey area, Philly area, and they say, hey, you know what, foil, the foil event starts at 11. Show up at 11. You say, hey, what starts at 8? And they say, epee starts at 8. And you go, I really want to get better at epee. I want to understand it. Could I come in at 8 and help with epee? Sometimes they'll say they're over refed. They don't need you, but that's pretty rare. So oftentimes they'll say, yeah, we'll pair you with someone and we'll get you some feedback and we'll help you out. And the same thing in any weapon. Your weapon's done for the day, but saber's starting at 3. Can I stay and, either try to ref saber or hang out with one of the saber referees and kind of ask some questions, get some feedback? I don't know. I've never seen the answer be no. I, at NACS, have gone up to Kelly or Devin or Mark Sassinos or Jerry Benson and said, hey, my event doesn't start till noon and you've got a foil event and I'd love to get some foil in, even if it's just Y14 or Y12. I just want to get a pool in. I just want some more, foil at this, level. Is that all right? And I've never had them say no. So you have these opportunities, definitely take them. But the big thing is find a referee in that weapon that you trust and talk to them and say, hey, I thought this call was this. Can you look at it and tell me why it's not? I think many of the senior referees get inundated sometimes with, hey, can you look at this? Hey, can you look at this? Hey, can you look at this? But I don't know any who don't make the time to do it.
The other thing is that when you're, especially, this is something that I tell people who I'm coaching, people who I'm developing, because we've kind of talked a lot about right now, right-of-way referees coming into epee, and at least if you don't care, pretending like you care, there is, but there is a lot for epee referees going into the other weapons to talk about as well, because I've seen epee referees approach foil pools and saber pools and say, "This is not my primary weapon. I apologize in advance for every mistake I'm going to make." Don't start off your foil pool this way or your saber pool this way. That is not how you want to approach the pool of your secondary weapon, because that is almost as bad as not caring, in terms of now you have just lost any hope the fencers have for you. Some coach from that pool is on their way to the bout committee table, all ready to have you replaced. I promise you. Because you just admitted you don't know what you're doing. Don't start there. Do the best you can. Go through it as professionally as you can and get through your pool or your DE, whatever it is. They will understand very quickly when you're there to help rather than as an expert. Trust me, they will know.
So I had a situation like that. A few years ago, we were Summer Nationals. I think it was Salt Lake City. One of the referees had a mild heart attack, which took out the referee, one of the assigners, and 2 referees. And we were a bit light on referees already. So to lose 4 in one shot was a bit of a challenge. I had come in early just to see if anybody needed help. And they're like, "Yeah, we need help in junior women's foil." And I went, "Oh, wow. That's like my 5th weapon." So, okay. So the girls in the pool were very excited to have, it was a male referee. And I walk over with the pool sheet and they go, "You're not him." And I went, I'm not. And they go, are you refereeing our pool? And I went, "Yes." And one of the girls I knew quite well, I'd reffed her since she was really little, and she went, "It's really not going to be that bad. Relax." And I was like, "I'm okay." And my first call was a very saber-like call because I was not ready to foil that morning. And her coach started yelling. She's like, "Relax, relax. Give her the bout. She'll get it." And I did, because even though I wasn't super confident, I didn't stand there and say, "I can't do this." I was just ready to do it. And it took me that bout to warm up, but I did. And then it was fine. But, luckily, fencers will figure out really quickly, especially if they've seen you around, that it's not necessarily your primary weapon. And they'll even help you get the flow down. The best help I've ever got from an athlete in foil was actually a Mont Blow. I was saying attack, no, attack. And they kept looking at me, and she went, "I'm going to help you out here. Say attack, no, when I miss, but say attack stops when I stop." And I went, "What?" And she's like, "Just do that for the rest of this pool. I promise you, they're going to stop looking at you like you're crazy." And okay. So the next time it happened, I was like, "Attack stops, attack." And the friends went, "Oh, okay, yeah, touche." And I went, ah. So sometimes it's really about learning the language of another weapon. And that actually really, really helped.
The other thing that I think that you get from the other weapon is we tend to, when we are in our weapon, we tend to go, especially the more experience we have in that one weapon, the more we tend to put blinders on towards new ideas and different ways of calling things. So for instance, saber referees, foil referees tend to, this is how I call one specific thing. And it doesn't matter what else is happening in the bout, what that attack looks like off the line. They're not going to change their call, and they're going to be very rigid about their interpretations, their nuanced interpretations for right of way. Once you take an active approach of learning another right of way weapon, you have to actually change how you look at actions and calls. And you are forced to now change your timing windows and what certain actions are called, which will, I think, ultimately help referees grow as you learn how to make calls and vary your calls for situations and timings for different bouts. because foil bouts, you know, attack and foil can change so dramatically and look so different from fencer to fencer that you get tripped up when you have fencers that are fencing very loose versus fencers that are fencing very tight in terms of what's attack and preparation, what isn't. And if you are super rigid in what your timing is, go referee saber for a day and tell me your timing window is going to be the same for saber. If you referee your foil very loose, and you can learn how to adjust your window based on how the fencers want to fence. And I think that is really important for both foil and saber, especially based on the level of how you referee your fencers and whether you're refereeing Y10s and Y8s versus Div 1 in junior national points teams. The other thing is for epee, learning the other two weapons, learn a right-of-way weapon, even if it is just to have a basic understanding and appreciation for what is happening on the strip, because it will improve your epee refereeing. A lot of epee referees tend to kind of ignore right-of-way and just pretend that it doesn't exist, when all of a sudden what you've done is you pushed yourself out of learning initiation for actions, learning timing on riposte around halts, because right-of-way does exist in epee. You know, it's rare, but there are moments in epee where one fencer breaks a rule and there's a double light touch and you're only awarding one of those points. So right-of-way does exist in epee, and referees tend to ignore that a lot. Especially epee referees who have been there for a long time and just ignored everything else. So whether you're a fencer or a coach or a referee, learn another weapon just to understand it. Even if you're not going to use it, learn it.
There's so, you know, the platform we're using right now is Side-by-Side, and we appreciate them giving us this platform, but some of the other cool stuff they do is not just me and Will talking. They have other people on, like they have Sama Farjani, who's been doing the rules, and they have videos that are like conversational videos that are about other weapons, and you should totally go and watch those as well, because I think they'll really, really help you if you're interested in learning a second weapon and you just want a basic foundation. Even if it's just, hey, I want to understand more and I want to be able to ask questions, great foundation there. So you should go check out the other videos they're doing. And to some extent, some of the videos that we've, that referee development has put on, that Side-by-Side did earlier. So if you found this link somewhere, just click on their thing. It's just really helpful. But I'm trying to think of the best way to say this. There's never a bad time to pick up a second weapon. No one's ever going to tell you don't be a 2-weapon referee. Anybody who tells you that just more than likely had a bad experience in a second weapon, but it's not a bad idea. And yes, like Will said, sometimes, you know, you could go to a tournament and not do your primary weapon the whole day. And that's happened to me. I've gone to 3-day events where I only did foil and saber. I only did foil and epee, and I'm a saber referee. It could happen, but as long as you have a good attitude about it, I mean, it is what it is. But it also does help you get better. And I think that's super, super important. A referee that is near and dear to my heart, Sharon Everson, who has since retired, was convinced she was going to turn me into a foil referee. Absolutely convinced. It still hasn't happened. I think she is still holding out some semblance of hope. But thanks to her constantly assigning me to foil anytime she was the head referee, I became a competent foil referee. And I appreciate that. And you may not realize sometimes when you go to an event, they're not putting you in another weapon to punish you. You're not being put in another weapon because you did something bad or wrong. Sometimes it's about getting you experience in events that aren't going to damage your self-esteem, that aren't going to damage your confidence. So, you know, you've done your Y14 men's and women's saber, and maybe your junior men's saber, and it's junior women's saber day, but it's also Y12 foil day. You may be doing Y12 foil because that's not a bad event for you to learn in. So don't assume that you're not in your primary weapon because it's a punishment. Not being in your primary weapon is not a punishment. You really need to look at it as an opportunity. For very, very complicated reasons, I didn't ref saber nationally for a year. And it was frustrating to me, but I came out the other side and I was like, this is fun. I enjoy epee. I enjoyed the epee referees. I enjoyed the coaches. I enjoyed the athletes, and I enjoyed what I got to see. And I learned an awful, awful lot. And I really came away from that looking at it as an opportunity to get better in another weapon. And I truly did. And it's been absolutely invaluable. And please don't, if you end up reffing epee, please don't look at it like it's the worst thing ever. It's really, really not. And whether or not you're doing Y10 epee, you're doing vet 70 epee, whatever it is, vet Y10 foil, vet 70 foil, whatever you're doing, just remember, everybody picks up on your affect, and everybody picks up on the vibe you're putting out. And you can really kind of change the whole vibe of your pool or your pod by how you're looking at your second or third weapon. So keeping a positive attitude and remembering every athlete in there is there to fence and is there to compete and is there to hopefully win. So whether it's Div 1 or it's Y10 or Vet 70 or whatever it is, you know, it's important that energy, you keep that energy high and you keep that energy positive.
I think that when people move around between weapons, they have this assumption that if you're a high-level foil referee, if they put you in epee, you're going to be doing Div 1 epee sometimes, or you're going to be doing higher-level stuff for a right-of-way referee. And I've only seen referees pulled from epee for one reason, and that is that they don't care in a youth event. Because they felt that they were better than the fencers that were around them. And that is the only time I see people pulled from epee. When I see people pulled from foil or saber, it's usually because they are tired or they are relatively new to refereeing and they didn't understand what they were doing. I remember my first Div 1 foil championships in April. And I was pulled from foil in the nicest way possible. Devin Donnelly was my pool assigner or my observer for the pool. We were splitting the Div 1 foil pool and it was doing okay. It was great. I was mediocre at best. It was fine. But what it did was when I was in the pod, I got through my 64s. My 64s went okay. And then I was like, he looked at me and I knew I was done, but I was okay with it because I knew that I wasn't going to be effective further on in that bout and in that pod. And he told me, and I will never forget it. And it was the nicest way to let me go because I knew I was out of my skill level. I was not there yet for that level of competition. And he told me that I could push you more, but I'm not going to break you. And I want you to want to come back to this. And they want you to come back. So sometimes when you're not going further in a weapon, it's because it's not that you're never going to be capable of it. It's because pushing you further in a high level event is not just poor for the fencers, but would be unfair to you as the referee to expect you to do more. And I went back to my primary weapon. I refereed epee for the rest of the day, and I was totally fine with it. But don't think that just because you're not refereeing your right-of-way weapon, that it's because they like somebody else. It's because we all have development growths. We all need to grow. And, you know, understanding the rules, if you understand the rules and you care about the athletes, and that's universal, you should be at least an okay epee ref. Maybe not amazing, maybe not understanding all the nuance, but you should be okay. The one thing outside of the rules that I think that trips up multi-weapon referees is the technical stuff, i.e. body cords and circuitry and diagnosing problems. Understand it a little bit for your secondary weapon, try to learn it for your secondary weapon, but you don't get tied up in it. There's usually another referee or an armorer that you'll be able to call to help you out. But understand that your test, before you go into that vent, don't run from the pool to the nearest specific person and ask them, what's a shim and how do I test a shim? Know that before you go into the pool. Know how to test your epee weights or your foil weights before you go into the pool. I have seen referees in foil failing epees failing foils with an epee weight, and then using foil weights in epee, or not understanding that foil doesn't have shims. So just understand and ask your questions before you go out to that pool. Anything you realize when you get out there, oh, this is going to be easy, and then all of a sudden there's little minute aspects that you need to understand. Just ask any other referee on that floor before you get out there as the pools are going out, hey, and no one's going to look at you poorly. No one's going to judge you for it. We're going to judge you when you don't know. We're never going to judge you for asking the question. So ask questions for your other referees. And I think that's all I got for being a two-weapon referee right now, unless you have something else.
No, I was going to say I had a similar story to the one you had with Devin, but mine was actually with Kelly in foil, where I think cadet women's foil. It was JOs. And there was a bout where I was like, I wasn't sure. It was a 32. I wasn't sure if I could do it. I saw the names, but then I saw the fencers and realized I was out of my depth. And I handed the bout off and said, I'm not capable of doing it. And not because there's a difference between being scared of a bout and feeling not up to a bout. And if you're scared of a bout, you should probably take it. If you don't feel like you're up for a bout, for whatever reason, you don't feel well, you're tired, you've seen those fencers fence before, and you don't feel like your skill level is what it needs to be to call that bout the way it needs to be called, it's okay to hand it off. No one's really going to fault you for it. I know I do push I do push referees when they tell me they're afraid of the bout. I'm like, what are you afraid of? Are you afraid of the coaches? Are you afraid of the personalities? Because for that, you can ref this bout. But if you don't feel like you're up to it for whatever reason, it's okay to hand it off. I don't know anybody who has faulted another person for that, but for me, it just so happened that, Will's got something to say.
Just keep going.
But I ended up, Kelly was nearby, and I handed the bout off, and the coach looked at her because she walked out he had seen me, and then she walked out to do it, and he kind of looked and was confused, and she went, she doesn't feel up to it. I didn't take it from her. She willingly handed off the bout. And, for me, I think it's important to recognize when you're just too tired. I've given up finals I really wanted to do because I was just too tired, and I didn't think the athletes. I thought the athletes deserved to have a referee who was more on their game at that moment.
I think it's really important to note here that your best refereeing, you're always a little nervous going into that bout. If you go into the bout and you're not scared, you're going to be scared halfway through because you're going to mess something up. You're going to miss something. And if you're lucky, it won't be that blatant. It won't be that obvious. It'll be something more nuanced. But for me, my best refereeing has always been bouts where I am a little bit more nervous than not. Because your adrenaline starts going, you start to think about what's happening. You tend to fall into the flow of the bout more. If you're not a little bit afraid, you're probably shouldn't take the bout if it's a really tight, high-level bout. Just because you don't want to miss the stuff and you're going to lose focus. That fear, that adrenaline, that energy will keep you focused for that bout. And focus, I think, is the hardest thing that we have for multi-weapon referees, because focus for epee is different than focus for saber or foil. And think about just a basic 5-touch pool bout. No matter what in saber, lights are going to be turning on in under 10 seconds. Your focus doesn't have to last that long. In epee, you can potentially have a bout go 3 minutes with nothing happening. And you are expected to focus for those whole 3 minutes. Or the only thing you're going to be getting for those 3 minutes is annulled touches because fencers don't actually know how to fence at the Y10 level. Hopefully you don't get that bout, but those bouts have existed and have happened where you only come out with 1 or 2 touches. In foil, you're going to go 3 minutes without a touch because you only get off target lights the entire time. And so all of these change your level of focus through the length of the bout and change the cadence of the bout because different touches matter at different times. Key touches happen at different points. The first touch always matters, but in epee, a 1-touch difference is far harder to overcome than in saber or foil. So fencers will sometimes get more tense at a 1-touch bout in epee than they will over a 4-point difference, because at a 4-point difference, one fencer knows his odds of winning are so slim. In saber, you can have a 4-1 flip in 4 actions and someone will just win the bout. So the intensity level and the focus just changes, and because of the time and how long it takes to score those actions and just the nuances around those weapons. So I think the focus is really where people fall into traps.
I want to add to what you're saying, because I think it's important to note that Will's not saying any one is easier than the other. They're different, right? It's not that, it's not that the focus in saber is easier than the focus in epee or foil or whatever. They're different. They require different types of focus, different types of mental stamina. No one is easier than the other. They are different, and you have to learn the differences in order to develop your stamina for each one. There are people who can, run for 10 miles, but can't bike for 2, right? It's not that one's easier than the other. It's just different. And I think it's really, really important to understand. I had the hardest time in the beginning with my stamina for foil. My eyes would start to hurt and my vision would get blurry. I had to learn it. But they're just different. And it's okay to have a hard time in the beginning. The really important thing is to try. And with events starting again, and then being a little bit, with them being a little bit smaller now, you're really going to have opportunities to take on a second weapon, to get experience in a second weapon, and to find some of the senior referees that are around to give you feedback and to observe you. So there's opportunities, clearly not as many, right, with the, with the COVID world, but there's going to be opportunities out there, and you really should take them. There's a couple of events coming up in the Midwest where I am, where I know people already have said, hey, I'd love to get some feedback if you're going to be around and if the tournament happens. Absolutely. Reach out to people like Will, myself, Taysir Mahmood, who I see hanging out on the call, who is absolutely one of my favorite people. With all the love and respect in the world, she and Will are two of my favorite people to ask epic questions to. I know that if I say one thing and both of them say another, I know I'm completely wrong. And I don't even question it. I'm just like, I'm wrong. So they're, in the Region 3 area, they're amazing. Will's in New York, Taysir's in the Boston area. Find the people that are around and take those opportunities. Go on Side-by-Side's Facebook or their YouTube and watch those videos, see who's on them, see who you can ask questions to. You may not, there are tons of reasons people don't take on a second weapon. They're afraid to, they think it's too hard. They don't want to because they don't want to get taken out of their primary weapon. I promise my time spent reffing epee helped my saber so much with seeing when somebody went off the strip, off the side of the strip or off the back of the strip. It helped immensely. Just understanding rules better and how to apply them, it absolutely helps. You may not realize it in the beginning, but a second weapon will help your primary weapon. I promise.
So
I think that's all we got. If there's any questions, happy to answer them. If anybody has anything to add, I see Humphrey and I see Taysir. So if you guys have anything you'd want to add, please feel free. I, of course, respect your opinions on things.
Excellent. Please do raise your hands if you guys want to join or share your opinion with us. And that was a great initiative, Alex and Will, from you guys under the U.S. Fencing Development Committee to have the referees approach you and dedicate time to answer their questions and worries. So that's perfect. So again, I support their initiative. If you guys want to reach out to them or us at any point, at any time, please feel free to do that. And see you guys next week.
Have a good one, guys.
Bye. Thank you.